minister's head. However, Anne had specifically requested that he use the longest ceremony possible. "After all, I'm only going to get to wear this dress once," she had said. He managed to drag it out to an hour with some creative maneuvering, but it seemed like only a second until the happy couple was announced and we were making our final walk back down the aisle. I wanted to do nothing more than go home and fall into bed, but as MOH, I certainly couldn't desert the bride. As soon as all of the guests had been packed off to the reception, we had an endless round of photographs taken in every conceivable combination of bridal party and family. Finally, we made it to the reception hall for cake and punch. Kathy Fortner met me at the entrance to the hall. "Honey, you look beautiful," she gushed as we exchanged a quick hug. I first met Kathy when interviewing for an assistant at my bookstore. She was a bubbly, curvy blonde in her early 40s, and nothing ever seemed to get her down. As soon as she had walked through the door, I knew she would quickly become one of my best friends, and she had. "Thanks, at least I didn't stumble. I wasn't known for my gracefulness." "It was perfect. You looked a little green when you first saw Steve, but I'm sure no one else noticed." I grimaced at the memory. Kathy was aware of exactly what had happened between me and Steve. She had met him a couple of times at my family's functions, and she'd never liked him. Something about Steve had always rubbed Kathy the wrong way. She never could explain it, and resorted to, "It's just a feeling I have," when asked. "I wish the earth would open up and swallow him," I sighed. She cackled and would have said more, but we were soon surrounded by people intent on having conversations about how beautiful the service was, how beautiful the flowers were, how beautiful the bride was, how lucky the groom was, and when was I getting married. Inevitably, this was the first question I was asked by any of my family members every single time they saw me. I was the topic of endless family discussion because I was 30 and still single. Although they didn't say so, I was always left with the impression that they thought there must be something wrong with me. This constant berating about my singleness had begun the day I turned 16 and was considered old enough to date. My Uncle Richard had led the charge with, "When are you going to find a boyfriend?" His questions had only gotten worse over the years, and he wasn't the only one who couldn't let it alone. My parents were running a close second and third. I was having yet another one of these conversations with Aunt May when I felt a slap on my back that nearly knocked the breath out of me. Kathy had extricated herself and headed for the punch bowl. "Well," began Uncle Richard, "I guess your younger brother beat you to the altar." Leave it to Uncle Richard to state the obvious in the most obnoxious of ways. "You ain't no spring chickie anymore, girl." Yes, he had actually called me Chickie. What a total caveman. "When are we going to see you catch a husband, or do you swing the other way?" I excused myself without responding, fuming and ready to throttle the next family member in my path who said anything about my lack of a relationship. As I turned, I nearly plowed into Kathy, who had been coming to bring me some punch and had overheard dear Uncle Richard's last remark. She took one look at my face and murmured, "Let's go to the ladies' room." She handed me the glass of punch and followed as I stalked off. I sincerely hoped it was spiked for my sake. "I'm fed up with them," I raged as I paced in front of the stalls. "They just can't leave it alone. I've dealt with this for 14 years, and I'm sick of all of them. It's gotten to where I hate the holidays because it's the same thing over and over. Why don't you have a boyfriend? When are you going to get married? When are we ever going to get grandkids?" I wanted to pull my hair in frustration, but I couldn't risk disheveling the hundreds of bobby pins that were keeping my curls in submission. "I'm sure they only mean it in a good way, that they want you to be happy," Kathy said. "They just don't want you to be lonely." "I'm not lonely. I don't even think about feeling or being lonely unless I've spent 30 minutes with them. Then I'm so mad I just want to play darts with our family photograph." I took a gulp of punch. Dang teetotalers, it wasn't spiked, and I really hadn't expected it to be. She patted my back in sympathy. "You know they're not going to change. Just try to ignore them, at least for the next hour or so." I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. "You don't know how hard that is. It would be one thing if it was just Uncle Richard, but it's not. It's the whole family, and they don't know when to shut up." I took a deep breath. "But I'll try for Anne's sake." I should have stayed in the bathroom. It was time for the bouquet throw, and my mother was making a beeline for me across the hall just as fast as her skirt would let her. "Emma, it's time to catch the bouquet. Don't hide in the back like you did last time. I want you up front. Make an effort this time."